Part 1: The House on Hollow Hill. When Daniel and Claire first saw the house, it was perfect. A Victorian-era home, standing tall and proud at the end of Hollow Hill Road, surrounded by towering oaks and golden fields that stretched for miles. It was the kind of house that whispered history, that had seen generations come and go. Daniel fell in love with it instantly. Claire was hesitant. She couldn't explain why. Maybe it was the way the house seemed too quiet when they stood in the empty rooms. Or the way the long, twisting hallways felt like they had too many doors. Or maybe it was just nerves. Because this wasn't just any move. This was their fresh start. A way to fix things. To leave behind the fights, the losses, the mistakes. To rebuild. "Come on, Claire," Daniel had said, squeezing her hand. "Can't you feel it? This place. This is it. This is home." And for the first few weeks it was. They settled in. The house had quirks. The old pipes groaned at night. The floors creaked when the wind blew just right. And sometimes, a cold draft swept through the hallways even when the windows were shut. Claire wrote it off as the house adjusting to them. Daniel worked late most nights. And she spent her evenings fixing up the neglected rooms, painting over peeling wallpaper, sanding down warped floorboards. It became routine. Wake up, work on the house, go to bed. And yet, that feeling never left. A heaviness in the air, like someone was watching, like the house was waiting. The first real incident happened one morning in the kitchen. Claire had just made coffee, staring out the window at the vast emptiness of the land behind their house. She felt something move behind her, a shift in the air, a whisper of motion, like someone had just passed by. She turned quickly. Nothing. But the kitchen chair closest to her wasn't in the same spot. It had been pulled back, like someone had been sitting there, watching her. She didn't tell Daniel. It sounded crazy. Maybe she'd bumped the chair and hadn't noticed. Maybe she was just stressed. But over the next few days, things kept happening. Small things. Things easy to dismiss until they weren't. Doors open in the morning that had been closed at night. Objects moved inches from where they had been left. A faint sound in the night, soft breathing, just beyond the bedroom door. Every time Claire woke Daniel, the house was silent. He'd roll over, mutter something about old houses settling, and go back to sleep. But Claire knew. She felt it. Something was inside their house. Something was watching them. And it was just getting started. Part 2. The house starts to wake. Claire stopped going into the basement. Not because of anything she could explain. Nothing had happened down there. But every time she stepped near the door, her stomach twisted. The air felt wrong. Too thick. Too heavy. Like something was breathing down there. Like something was waiting. She told herself it was just her imagination. Until the night Daniel saw it too. It was late. Claire had woken up thirsty, slipping out of bed to get a glass of water. She moved quietly through the dark hallway, the house silent around her. And then a sound. Soft, rhythmic. Drip, drip, drip. She followed it. Into the bathroom. The faucet was on. Not a lot, just a slow, steady leak. But Claire was sure she had turned it off before bed. She reached for the handle, and the water turned red. Her breath hitched. The sink was filling with dark crimson liquid. She stumbled back, knocking into the doorframe, and then, just as quickly as it had started, it stopped. The water ran clear again, like nothing had happened. Claire spent the next hour convincing herself she imagined it. Daniel was working late again, and she refused to sit alone in their bedroom, so she curled up on the couch, the TV humming softly in the background. At some point, she must have dozed off, because when she opened her eyes, the TV was off. The room was pitch black, and Daniel was standing in the doorway, staring at her. Her stomach dropped. "Daniel?" she whispered. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. The shadows stretched long behind him, swallowing him into the dark. And then, his lips moved, but the voice that came out wasn't his. "Why did you wake me up?" Part 3. The house remembers. The next morning, Daniel had no memory of standing in the doorway, no memory of speaking, no memory of anything at all. Claire wanted to leave. Daniel refused. "We just moved here," he argued. "It's stress, Claire. You're not sleeping well. You're scaring yourself." Claire didn't fight, because it wasn't Daniel's choice anymore. The house had already decided. That night, Claire locked the bedroom door. She wedged a chair beneath the handle. She didn't sleep. She listened to the creaking of the hallway, to the sound of bare feet moving against the floorboards, to the voice soft just outside the door, whispering her name. The doorknob twisted, once, twice, then silence, until she heard Daniel's voice, right outside. "Why did you lock the door?" She squeezed her eyes shut, pulled the blanket over her head, prayed for morning. She woke to screaming. Daniel's screaming. She tore the chair away from the door and ran into the hallway, to the basement. The door was wide open. Daniel stood at the top of the stairs, his face pale, his hands shaking. And from below, from the blackness of the basement, came a sound, a voice, the exact same voice as Daniel's. "Claire." It laughed. Then the door slammed shut, and Claire knew the house had decided who it wanted to keep.